Hello, I'm Suzanne Collier from bookcareers.com and I'm the author of How to Job Search in Book Publishing, the Ultimate Insider's Guide. And this is a video that I really don't want to make, but it's a video sadly I have to make. And this is called I've Just Lost My Job. Now, I've helped hundreds of people through this kind of situation, not so much with negotiating the redundancy, because I don't do the legal stuff, but through your job has ended, helping you through that period where you're job searching for the first time in many, many years, or you may have just been in a contract and you're looking for something else, and you're looking at the job market when you're perhaps in a situation that might be slightly desperate because you've got bills to pay and mortgage and other responsibilities, and you need to restore your income as soon as possible. My first piece of advice is really don't panic. And those immortal words from Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, really need to come into force here, because it's so easy to just go into free fall when you've lost your job, and particularly if it's a job you've been in for many years, or you've got a deep emotional connection to the work you're doing, as most of us in publishing have. We've got a deep emotional connection to the journals, the books, the authors, the imprint. We've done a lot of work on them. We've put a lot of ourselves into developing them and making them into exemplary publications, and suddenly to feel like you've had the rug taken from under your feet can be quite tough, and your emotions will go into freefall. No one knows precisely how they will react in such a situation until they're actually living through it. And what you'll find is that you may say things you don't mean, you may say things that you do mean but you really shouldn't say, and you're just all over the place. So please just take a step back, a deep breath, and don't panic. The second thing is really possibly the most painful and humiliating in certain respects. It can feel really humiliating, and that is to take care of your finances. And I wish somebody had told me this before I went through a long period without work. Mine was for health reasons, but I wish that somebody had told me this at the very beginning, and it's why I give the advice to you now. And that is to take care of your finances right at the beginning, even if you've got a sizable lump sum come through as on termination of your employment. And if you're going to take care of your finances, try to do it first thing in the morning and get it out of the way rather than dwell on it all day. Just pick up the phone and make those phone calls, cancel those direct debits, do it now. And my advice here is to behave like your income is not going to be restored. Now, it might very well be restored, and one would hope, and in my experience it usually is, sometimes between 3, 6 and 9 months after a job loss. But if you behave like it's never coming back, it actually reduces the amount of stress that you put yourself under, because you're not always, oh my God, where am I going to find the money for this direct debits that are going out every month when you're on such a limited income. So to go through and see what you can manage without, what's critical, always prioritise your priority bills. This does not constitute legal advice, by the way, but this is just some suggestions, and to look at what possibly you can manage without for the time being. And if you're always in a job where at the end of the month when you get paid, you know you've got debts, you know that you've got payments that you're your salary goes in and goes out straight away, and you're just barely been keeping afloat with your salary, then my advice, if you're in the UK, is to talk to one or two of the debt management charities, and these are things like National Debt Line and Step Change. A true charity that's helping you with debt recovery will never charge you a fee or sell you a policy, so make sure you're clicking the correct links and phoning the correct numbers, because it's very easy at this time, because also your mind might be all over the place, and that's perfectly normal, but you need to be very careful that you don't get caught up in any scams. And it's the same when we get on to the next stage, which is to register for unemployment benefit, is to check that you're clicking the official government gov.uk links if you're in the UK, and if you're in another country where you can claim some form of unemployment benefit, to make sure you're clicking the official links. The top link that's sponsored is very often a scam and not the official link. That's how people get caught out. So if you're doing a search on the internet, to make sure you're using the official links. Now, registering for unemployment benefit is a painful process, and it can be deeply humiliating. And the thing is, always remember the professional person that you are. When you start going through these very demeaning activities, and they can feel very demeaning and humiliating activities, that you remember the professional person you are and you behave like the professional person that you are. So initially, all registrations of things like benefits are online. If you've got over £6,000 savings, any amount you might receive in job seekers allowance or universal credit, as it is in the UK now, might be reduced. But it's really important to register in the system to protect your national insurance contributions, which might not mean a lot now when you're still of working age, but if you're missing national insurance contributions in the future, they might reduce the amount of state pension that you get, and they also could reduce, in some circumstances, your access to other benefits as well. So I always say, just go through the system, put on your suit of armour and just push yourself through it. It's not, I wish I could say good things, but the good thing I will say to you is that if you're going to the job centre, and initially it's all online, but then you'll get called in for an interview with a work coach, is to be the professional person that you are and go in and look like you are job ready. Now, they might force you to look at all sorts of jobs because their job is to get you off the system. And if you don't, they'll set some targets for you that you may have to apply for a certain number of jobs every week, or spend a certain number of hours job seeking every week. And as best as you can, comply with their rules so that you don't get sanctioned. My advice is, because they'll say you need to spend 35 hours a week job hunting, my advice is actually that that's not healthy for anybody. You really should be planning your day. One of the things I would always recommend is you act like you've still got a job, but your job is looking for a job. So to get up, wash, shower, breakfast as you normally would, and then spend your morning looking for a job. That might be clicking off the websites, and we'll go through this in the next point, any kind of job seeker activities. Then you have lunch, and then you go out and you do some other activity, but you keep an eye on your phone and your email, so that if anything comes back, you're always available. So you're always available to look for a job, but your actual brain time of looking for a job is concentrated into that morning. That also puts a lot of the stressful things in the morning, so again, you're not dwelling on them for the whole day. Then we look at getting yourself job ready. This is point number 4. This is partly where I come in. Now, I've written a book. Might look like an entry-level book, but actually it's almost everything I know to some extent. Once you get past the first 2 chapters, there's a whole chapter on finding jobs, and it lists all the different formal and informal ways to find work. Then there's a chapter on CVs, covering letters, and 3 chapters on job interviews and how to ace them and how to ace the different sections of a job interview, the preparation, the actual questions, and there's a brilliant 1 to 10 that will enable you to answer any interview questions that are thrown at you. And then there's the preparation for any interview tests, and some of those interview tests are at entry level, but they'll get you thinking anyway. And there's a chapter on going freelance if that's something that you're considering to do. But I'm not here to pitch my book. What I'm here to do is to give you some very solid advice right now. Now, if your job has been made redundant, and remember, jobs get made redundant, not people. So change your vocabulary. So when you're talking, you're not saying, I got made redundant. You say, my job got made redundant. This will also help any feeling you feel that this is personal. Now, redundancy is not personal. Of course it feels personal, but it's not actually personal. So take the personal out of it. Jobs get made redundant. My job got made redundant. So if your job got made redundant, what you want to do is to examine whether that job is going to exist in the future. Now's the time to give yourself a little bit of career guidance, or you can come to me for career guidance, and you need to look and assess what's actually happening around the sector of publishing that you're in and see whether it's reducing or whether it's growing. And within that, you'll then know whether there's going to be more jobs, whether it's going to be a simple, oh yes, I was a senior commissioning editor at this publisher, I can look for commissioning editors at other publishers, or I was doing something like production controller, and you're looking around and you're not seeing any other production controller jobs around. Production controllers do exist, I'm just using that as an example. But if you go through that and have a look, and I always say to people at this moment of time as well, is to be what I call a curious job seeker, which is to look at almost every job advertisement that looks like it might be of the level that you're looking for, and read beyond the job title and read through the responsibilities that that job has and the skills and competencies that that job requires, and see whether that might be something you want to move into, whether it's something you want to do. Maybe it's a new job title for doing an established role. Some publishers in the industry that I think just make up job titles just to attract curiosity in the role. So just because it might say something like business manager, it might not actually be a business manager. It could be some form of editorial production or marketing job. So always be a curious job seeker. And then it comes to looking at your CV, covering letter, and hopefully interview processes. Now, in my book, I use real life examples, and I talk about CV tools, and that there's several tools that you can use on your CV to make your application stand out because the number one question I always get asked is, how do I make my application stand out? And that is by using different tools, whether it's a strapline, whether it's key skills, whether it's writing a personal profile, any combination of those, separating out experiences. So think about what it is that's going to make somebody hire you, and try to prioritise that on your CV, and always tailor your CV to every role. And the same applies to covering letters. Please don't write formulaic covering letters. Start with the job advertisement, start with a blank piece of paper and try and match yourself to the job advertisement. And by doing that, you'll write a much detailed, well thought out covering letter. And then same with interviews, is to do the research. The chapter on interviews, first chapter on interviews, is written so you can use it as a checklist to take you through all the different things that you need to research before you go to a publishing interview. And other things you can do too is to be observant of what's happening in the industry. If you can, find a way to still keep up with the news and look at the competitors of the publisher that you've just left and see what they're up to, how they're expanding, how the different publishers compare, and keep in touch with what's going on. I also suggest that you identify, say, the top 10, 20, 30 publishers you think you want to work for, and have a look what's going on with them. Most have career pages now. Most of the big publishers have career pages. You can register with them. Now this is the bit which I suppose you could call the sales pitch, which is, where do you go for further support? Now if you're still negotiating with your employer about your redundancy package, I would recommend that you aim to include some provision for redundancy support within your package. It should be separate from any redundancy pay they make you, and usually adequate redundancy support amount is about £1,500, and in career terms we call this outplacement, and I call it career support. Some people call it redundancy counselling. And that money is spent on either going with a preferred supplier to your employer who can take you through what we call a journey, from helping you with your CV, where to look for jobs, prepping for interviews so that you are 100% job ready, and also dealing with some of the emotional side of redundancy. Or you can ask your employer, if they've got a figure for that, whether you can use it with an outside person, which could be somebody like me. If you're in the publishing industry in the UK and you've been employed for more than a year or more, you may qualify for some free support from the book trade charity via myself, and you should contact me in the first instance and I'll screen you and see whether you qualify. But the demand on the charity's funds is very, very high at present, so I suggest that you try as hard as possible to ensure there's some outplacement provision within your redundancy package. And the reason why you need, or it's best to get outplacement, is that somebody like me can help reduce the time that you're unemployed. Now, we can't make guarantees, but we can help reduce the time that you're unemployed, because we know who tends to be recruiting, who tends to be expanding, who tends to be laying off people. If you're using the same CV and the same methods that you were using even 3 or 4 years ago to look for a job, you're going to get caught out, because the way that recruiters and publishers recruit all the time changes. There are trends, there are different things. There's certain things that might have been okay when you were first looking for a job that are now completely not okay now. And it's all those little bits, and also we can help support you through the journey so that you don't feel alone, because it can be a very, very lonely place. Now, I'm sorry if I sound like the purveyor of doom in this, talking about humiliation, talking about negativity, and talking about feeling lonely and despondent, but I'd much rather prepare you for this so that if it happens to you, you can think, oh yes, Suzanne told me I'd feel like this. One of the most important things is, and why you need to balance your day, is to go outside in daylight, even for 20 minutes. Just go and get some fresh air, go and walk around the park if you've got one, go and, if it's cold, just go and walk around the supermarket, up and down the aisles for a few times. Just go out and try and get some exercise, some fresh air. If you're somebody that's already got a rigid exercise scheme, then just keep it up, because it will help you manage any stress, it will help you manage any negative feelings. And the one thing I want to reassure you is this is just temporary. It might be a short temporary for a few weeks, it could be a long temporary for a few months, but it is just temporary, and you will get back into work, and you will get back into working on something that you love. And that's where I want to leave it today. May you all be doing a job you love and being paid the salary that you so richly deserve. And if you need to reach me, my email is suzanne@bookcareers.com. Thank you for listening.